Massive weekend of hurling, loads of finals on. No better place to start than what's close to my own heart. Coola getting the title win over St. Bridget's, 118 to 114. I don't know if you saw too much of it, but it was a fairly tense sort of a game. Physical attrition, long grass on that Parnell pitch, soft sod. It wasn't a day for the faint-hearted, but probably just more so relieved to get it done than anything else.
Yeah, certainly the scoreline kind of jumps out at you. You know, what wasn't added now, but just when you look at it like that, the team going for their fourth title in 4 years is run to 4 points by fourth and 5 years. Like Bridget's, who was at 03, was their last final appearance. So massive underdogs coming into it, and cool with all the Ireland winners and the experience. So that's what those kind of strike you. And obviously it just seemed like it was kind of a battle between, on the scoreboard at least, kind of free takers with David Tracy and Paul Winters. And then I suppose for the wider sense, like everything the Coola do at the moment, everyone just wants to know how Conor Callaghan did. He gets a goal early on, but it's kind of what happened in scoring that goal kind of grabbed the attention.
Well, look, there's no two ways about it. It was a terrible tackle from Alan Nolan. So anyone who hasn't seen the goal, I'm sure most people have, it's online. But Con turns, runs in on goal, lifts it up off the hurley and smashes it in. And you'd see this with goalkeepers now, where they lunge out at the guy who's shooting. But he lunged out with his foot and he completely caught Con on the thigh. And if it was a more innocuous sort of a situation, I might just ignore it, but I don't think you should, because it was so dangerous that, and I think that the Dublin County Board need to look at this in a big way, because you could end up losing the guy who is very quickly becoming the face of Dublin football to a horror tackle, one that wasn't too dissimilar 12 months ago, where Mark Howard from Kilmacud Crokes was running through on goal against Ballyboden, and a similar tackle, he ended up getting his knee destroyed by Gary Maguire, who was in goals for Bowden. And those sort of tackles, it's definitely not the first time Nolan has done it. I mean, I've bumped into him a few times, got on fine with him, but that sort of tackle, there is no place for it, because I think a goalkeeper knows what he's doing when he comes out with his feet up like that, and to catch a guy at the top of the leg, and the ref let it go, did nothing. I just thought it was very, very poor.
Yeah, look, the footage does not look good at all, and like you say, he's the star of Dublin football. Like, he's becoming kind of the star of these club hurling months in October, November. I mean, there's so many people who maybe a passing interest in it, but they're clued into it. Like, they're clued into what he does, and the fact that even the type of goal he got, like, it was. I saw someone kind of making the point. He has that move in football and hurling. When he gets the ball, he just spins around and just immediately kind of makes a beeline straight for the goal and finishes it. But yeah, it is interesting the thing you say about goalkeepers coming out, because you do notice that, like, at the nose, that they're trying to spread themselves as wide as possible, but kind of the legs are kind of going out, and it's guys just trying to stop shots with any part of their body, really. But kind of left a sour taste, I suppose, looking at it when you see kind of, because it would have been deferred coverage on TG Cahir. I imagine a lot of people have been tuning in to see how he gets on, and the fact that his day has ended so early.
After 3 minutes. Do you know what? In an overall sense, St. Bridget's played very, very well. We'd met them in the group stages, and like, it was a double-digit win for us. They ended up with 2 lads sent off, 1 lad sent off this time, and they stopped an awful lot of the Coola lads who have been, putting big performances for the club over the last number of years. Really stopped plenty of our players from hurling. So, like, huge credit on that front. It was just that one tackle that I have a real serious issue with. Because
the Bridges team sheet doesn't jump out with you, the way maybe Kilmacud or Ballybodens do, with kind of big star names. I know, obviously, you've Alan Nolan, Dar Plunkett, Paul Winters, different stages have played with Dublin, but it just seemed like it was a big collective performance.
Keane O'Sullivan was another. He scored a lovely goal in the second half, and I'd say plenty of people in Dublin would know of Owen Dunn as well, who played centre forward. Good player, got on plenty of ball also. But I just about saw it through. Really tense. Definitely, I'd struggle to name more than a couple of lads who played to their limit.
Just a bit of relief so at the end?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I think sometimes teams get a scare and then they can kick on from it. Sometimes you don't get away with the scare. This time Coola did, so we'll see how it goes from there, especially first year for William Maher as well. No doubt important for him to get going. The Tipperary Championship, so you were down at the double header semi-finals this weekend in Thurles.
So the Stapleton double is on.
The Stapleton double, yeah. The OurGame double is not on, as Michael Verney's Birr lost the county final in Offaly, but we'll get back to that.
We'll get to
that. So the Tipperary semi-finals, just to give the score lines, and then we'll kind of delve into each of them separately. Killadangan 312, Nina Aero 115, and Borris-Ileigh 16, Killarwan McDonough's 15. So it's going to be a Killarwan Borris-Ileigh final in 2 weeks' time. What stood out to you from this weekend of hurling and tip?
Well, I was really looking forward to going down to it because of the novelty of it. Because
your father's from Tipp.
Well, it was more just from the outside looking in that over the last few years it's been dominated by Thurles Sarsfields, you know, so that there just seems a bit of novelty, and I think it's great when you get to cover these matches where, you know, that both sides, it's a massive opportunity for them.
All four.
And then in this case, it's all four semi-finalists. You know, Kildangan never won it, and the other three haven't won it in kind of between 24 and 34 years was kind of the drought. So it's massive for all the players. So you could see that there was a good bit of tension hanging over both games. First game was a good bit more free-flowing. Kildangan and Nina, really good first half. Nina at times looked like electric in their forward play. Michael Heffernan was superb, and Paddy Murphy, and then Jake Morris was always a threat. He got a goal.
Were Morris and Mikey Heffernan inside, 2 men full forward line, or how did
they were at the start, and then Tommy Heffernan picked up a little bit of an injury, so he kind of moved in, and Michael was a bit outside, and then Paddy Murphy is kind of a target man, and like all four played for Tipp at various levels, so that's a lot of firepower. So like 1-11 to 1-7 at half time, and you're thinking, you know, it's 12 months since Nina took out Thurles, got to the final. They're in the driving seat to do it, and just like I think really Kildangan just started using the ball a lot better in the second half, and their defensive unit, like they're just a really brilliant collective team. Like, you know, there's no
stars, but lots of really good players.
But they still have like 6 guys who won All Ireland medals with Tipp this year. So that's a massive amount of experience. But there's no like you said, there's no star. Willie Connors is maybe the most recognisable name to people because he came on in games this year.
Alan Flynn,
he was scoring the frees, and he was also coming back and winning a lot of ball in the second half. Was really good and very impressive. Paul Flynn, full forward, Barry Hogan in goal, and then they just got a break. They got a second goal, which they worked really well, and then Sean Hayes came on, took a weak enough shot after a brilliant run, and it just slipped through the hand of goalkeeper Michael McNamara. So very unfortunate for him, especially because a few minutes later he made an absolutely incredible double save, but that will probably be kind of forgotten. And then it was a case in the last 5 minutes, Nina just pumping ball forward. Jake Morris got a point, he got another shot on goal but was blocked, and just that Kildangan defence just kind of held out. So strange game afterwards. You're thinking Nina probably played better for 3/4 of that game, but it's all about kind of timing the run to the finish line and hanging in there, and Kildangan did that.
4 points in the second half for Nina,
and only one in the last quarter.
That's torrid. And because it's very easy to kind of label a townie team this and that and the other, but after losing a couple of finals recently, always been really competitive, and they've so much talent. It doesn't do a whole lot to dispel any sort of myths and labels.
I think when you come close so many times as well, just the pressure heaps on, and then the fact that there was no, like Thurles weren't there, or Clonelty or Lockmore weren't there. There was no big side who'd won in the last couple of years in the semi-finals. Maybe it just kind of adds with that little bit more, you know. Now. And like Kildangan are just an incredible story. Their second team got to the intermediate county final on Saturday, so they'll be playing effectively. I suppose Senior B is the best way to describe it to people hurling next year, but essentially they'll have 2 senior hurling teams in the county in 2020, which is amazing. I mean,
they were intermediate themselves in 2005.
You probably know better growing up what way you would have regarded Kildangan as a club. Like, I mean, they probably wouldn't have registered in the kind of, well, they weren't registered on the senior radar, so it's an amazing rise.
Yeah, it is. And like Dara Egan is on the second team, and you were saying he's definitely heavily involved with the first team.
So he was doing water on the sideline, you know. He's involved obviously with coaching the Tipp seniors this year, and just the way he was kind of chatting to people. But like, they have a very, very high quality management team. Sean Tracy used to play for Galway. Brian Lawler, who used to manage Kildare, so they have a lot of fairly experienced people there themselves. But you could see afterwards how much it meant to them.
And it's a very interesting sideshow to the final now that you've got a Portumna man, Sean Tracy, managing Kildangan, and a Portumna man, Johnny Kelly, managing Borris-Ileigh.
Yeah, and like we're kind of chatting to him a bit about that afterwards. And
Johnny.
Yeah, and he's obviously appointed the Offaly coach as well. So as he said, I'm looking forward to that position, but not thinking about that at the moment, you know. So like, big achievement from him, I suppose, kind of taking him back to second in 3 years, and he just seems to work the oracle, doesn't he? I mean, he's done it with Portumna in Galway, Kildare and Offaly. He's involved with Galway under 21 side, so he just seems to have a knack of getting a side really well organised, and that's what I kind of took from the second semi-final. I just thought Borris-Ileigh really, really well organised. They have the standout players, I suppose. You know, Paddy Stapleton, Dan McCormack, Brendan Maher have all won All-Ireland seniors, but when you're down to 14 men in the last quarter, it's kind of that grit is going to get you through.
Did Drifter deserve to get sent off, Liam Ryan?
I think it was a second yellow. You know, I thought we give so much flack to referees. I thought the refs in both games did very well. Like, you know, there was no major standout call. You know, I thought the games flowed as much as they could. Thought they were both good, and it was Conor Kenny really that stood out in the second game. I mean, 7 points from play. Like, he got 1 point. We were in the press box in the Canaan stand. he caught a puck out right on the sideline, just turned and lofted it over straight away. And you just know that that's a case of guy whose confidence is high, you know. And he got 4 in the last quarter, and he was flying it. And it wasn't a great game. It was very tense. You could
16-15 kind of tells you that.
Yeah, and it was 7-6 at half time, and it just smacked of one where like there was a lot at stake. Both sides maybe trying to cancel each other out, and the classic cliche semi-finals are for winning. It was maybe let's just get over the line. You know, this is a massive opportunity for us. You could see they both maybe had that kind of approach, and it was always seemed like it was going to take maybe one forward to cut loose, because both sides were kind of getting a lot of their scores from kind of frees or maybe scrappy breaks in the middle.
Well, even looking at that, like looking at the scores, so Conor Kenny with 7 all from play, like that's unbelievable. And I even see Hurler in the ditch tweeting. In the last 20 minutes when Borris were down to 14, he won 5 puckouts and scored 3 from play, a display from for the ages. So Kevin Maher got 1 from play, 4 frees. Brendan Maher got a couple of frees. Jerry Kelly a sideline. JD Verney with a point. So really not a spread of scores from open play.
Yeah, and like Kenny was like they went nearly 20 minutes in the first half without scoring Borris-Ileigh, and it was
that happened against Drum in the first game. Didn't score in the first 10 minutes. Didn't score in I'd say the last 15 minutes of the game.
Yeah, and it was 2 Kenny points from play was all they got from play in the first half. Like it just looked at times that Kilruane were going to cut loose. You know, they hit the post going for a goal in the first half. A couple of other balls kind of bobbing around, but just didn't really kind of catch fire. Jerome Cahill obviously a massive loss.
Yeah, I mean he did his hamstring against Clonolty.
The All Ireland under 20 hurler of the year. You know, a huge player for Tipperary. Imagine putting his kind of energy into the kind of that team in midfield or half forwarding. The difference it could have made.
And never mind, Niall O'Mara would have had an interesting week trying to get off from a suspension. Kilruane tweeted that they were confident of getting it off, which was an unusual step. In fairness,
he was very, very prominent. It just struck me the classic thing of where do you play your county player. So they played him centre back and then kind of pushed him up towards the end. I suppose he's better known as a half forward for Tipperary time and kind of looking at it from a national point of view.
Yeah, it's like putting him up in corner forward. And I suppose they're thinking Borris-Ileigh are down to 14 men. If we get the ball in there, Borris-Ileigh won't have the extra cover back because they need to keep a certain amount of players upfield. And
they weren't really getting much from their full forward line, so I think they just felt they had to try and get something else. Yeah,
possibly lacking a couple of scores. Keane Darcy got 3 points from playing 4 frees, but at half time there was an interesting situation that you saw.
Yeah, so the second half was just about to start, and then there was kind of a pause, and then you realised that Kilruane had only 14 players on the field, and next thing they started making a late substitution, as it were, on the sideline. And then Keane Darcy came back out, so we're not exactly sure what exactly happened. Just some talk maybe he was ill, because he then was being kind of tended to by the physio, seemed to be drinking a lot of water, and then put a bib on, then came back, and in the 37th minute he came back into the match, and he was flying around and he was very prominent and all that. So yeah, now I don't think it had a massive effect on the game because it was only 6 or 7 minutes. Like, you know, I think like he was still very prominent towards the end, still getting points and all that, and Kilruane still had enough chances to kind of draw level.
And like interesting, even though like if he's coming on at half time and then straight back off, there's a guy who's gone on for 3 minutes, and then that's his kind of game done, and you've also wasted a substitution.
Yeah, and that guy actually himself came back on then again later, Sean McAdams, you know. But the fact that they were taking off so many forwards is probably tells you a good bit of kind of what you need to know about kind of what affected them on the day.
But you'd never know what's going on in a dressing room. You know, there could be all sorts of things physically for players, psychologically. I remember before the Club All Ireland in 2018, the replay down in Portlaoise, I forgot my boots. Yeah. So like I had my like the multi studs, the short ones, but the pitch was heavy, and I'd forgotten my long ones, which were out on the back window, still drying from the previous game. And I was like mental sort of gymnastics going on, saying it'll be okay. Then I end up getting called to go in on the field, and you're like, oh, I hope I don't slip.
You hope you don't slip, yeah.
So you just never know what's going on. The Cork final was on this weekend. Imokilly completed the 3 in a row with a 217 to 116 win over Glen Rovers. So the first time that a team has done a 3 in a row under Cork since 1982 with St. Finbarrs. So the interesting subplot was that Glen Rovers had been looking for Imokilly to be more or less booted out of the championship divisional side last year, and that was voted down heavily. Do you think that added a bit of spice going in?
I think it probably did, yeah. I mean, like, and I suppose there will be the classic case of like it's a club against a division, you know. There was a bit of that last year when Middleton played Imokilly, was down at that Cork final, but Imokilly just kind of accelerated so far clear on the scoreboard. But talking to a couple of people that were at it, because the Glen were kind of hanging in there for so long, like, you know, it made it fairly interesting, and it sounded a fairly spicy affair. Like, you know, a couple of incidents involving selectors on the sideline and stuff like that as well. Like, you know, so like a massive amount at stake. They both were going for the 3rd title this decade. It seems like there was kind of just a puck out mix up for the Glen just before half time, and then a second goal arrived for Imokilly through that Seamus Harnedy. Earlier, Declan Dalton's goal I'm not sure will it maybe be on GABO and TG Car, whatever, but apparently it was an absolutely super finish from about 25 yards from a free, and he just has a brilliant strike off the ball. So you're up then by...
He murders the ball when he hits it.
Yeah, he absolutely smashes it, and he won a county last week with his club, and he's just in brilliant form.
Imokilly were 6 up at half time, but the Glen got it back to a point before Shane O'Regan Oak's goal, and I believe Glen missed a fairly open goal also.
Yeah, so I think it was 3 points, and I think they pushed Robert Downey up into attack. Apparently he was really good in Seamus Harnedy. Apparently he did a really good job.
He would win back for Cork against Clare this year.
Yeah, and there'd be a bit of a debate in Cork, what's his best position. He's played underage in attack, and he's kind of then been wing back for the seniors.
Didn't have a great under-20 final against Tipp.
No, probably not as prominent in that game. And then that chance, and apparently the Glen goal in the first half was brilliant from Donald Cronin, but I think there was another situation. Patrick Horgan, he got clear once, maybe outside a goal, and Imokilly, the guy just fouled him apparently straight away. So I think that was their big thing, to stop him. But the consensus is, I suppose, given the team of stars that Imokilly have on paper, Glen put up a serious fight, and they now have that really tricky position. 3 weeks time, they got to go up to Tipp to play the Tipp champions in the Munster Club semi-final.
Yeah, when you're not champions.
Yeah.
Does it cheapen it a little bit as a Cork person? Does it kind of cheapen it that the team that aren't champions are going in?
Well, I don't think you can have the division going forward. I think that's kind of recognised, and same as happening in Kerry football. I'm just kind of used to it. It's happened so much over the years, and you see it in Kerry as well. And
do you like the likes of UCC and college teams competing in county championships?
I think that's probably a little bit more debatable than the maybe
because
the division.
Because McKilly are Cork players.
Yeah, and
largely Cork players.
And the concept of Seamus Harnedy would probably never get to play senior club hurling if it wasn't for McKilly. Now he's won 3 county titles.
But is that just life? You were born in a small place, tough.
Yeah, but I think it does do something for the guys to develop on the county in the wider sense, And I do think next year now, the situation where you're going to have 2 grades of 12 in Cork, 2 senior grades, so they're ineligible. So, for example, Paddy O'Sullivan, Declan Dalton can't play with McKilly next year because their clubs are going to senior A. Now, the flip side then is that Colm Spillane will probably be back from injury, and Niall O'Leary. So Imokilly will kind of get stronger, but it'd be interesting to see how Glen Rovers do now, because that's a tough situation.
Horgan got 11 points, 7 frees. Donald Cronin got the goal, like you said. Dean Brosnan with a couple of points. Declan Dalton won 7, Harnedy won 2, Bill Cooper 3 points.
That's all the big names scoring, isn't it? Standing up like you want them to.
Big spread. There were a couple of complaints about the referee. I saw a few tweets flying around. So Aidan Cooney said, better team won, but officials were an embarrassment. How a linesman can overrule an umpire baffles me. Couldn't work that out either. Linesman for the line, umpire for the post, says Brad O'Donoghue. So it was a clear wide ball to all and sundry. Fair play to the linesman, who was in perfect position to see it was wide and had courage to stand up and being counted. So not everyone agreed. That was John O'Riordan. Not everyone agrees, but you're always going to have that too. People cribbing over officiating.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it does cost teams at times. The Leitrim final was on at the weekend. Michael Verney wasn't too happy with my pronunciation last week, but Carrick hurling, or Carrick I should just say, beat Clunan Amont 120 to 21 points after extra time. So that's back to back for Carrick. Stephen Goldrick, he netted the game's only goal 2 minutes into the second period of extra time. That's going to kill a team at that stage if it's tight, isn't it?
They would have won the first ever, I think they were the first ever Legion club to win a Connacht hurling title last year. They won the junior, so
they beat Ballygar, I think it was.
Yeah, I think it was some Galway team,
Clunan Amont were winning 16 to 15 until Gavin O'Hagan hit an equalising free in the 3rd minute of time added on, so that's a killer. Actually, a tweet about John Mitchell's GAA, or from John Mitchell's GAA. They said, we're back in an All-Britain hurling final after a great game against Father Murphy's today. 2 good hurling sides flying the flag in Britain with a scattering of homegrown players on each side. That was actually Sunday. Now, we'll have to get on to the Offaly final. Poor Michael Verney.
Yeah,
that was a tough one to take. I do feel for him. Sometimes people kind of would like to sneer someone when it doesn't go right, but how much a lad is putting into it. He's battled injuries all year. This would have been tough to take. Ryan has 16 points, Birr 112, and Ryan has hit 9 of the last 10 points. Yeah. So Birr had it in their hands. That is just a sickener.
And the thing is, you're up 111 to 7. You're probably just thinking, on the pitch and on the line, if we don't concede a goal here, we're okay. That's the big thing. So that's the side of it for Birr. Really tough to take, because for all their success, for a club of their stature, 08 being their last title, that's tough. When you're, I suppose, on top for so long, and then it's not like you've gone way back or anything. You're still thereabouts, but just not managing to get over the line. And they've just had some tough days in finals over the last while. Now, amazing comeback by Ryan is the flip side of it then, and once again, Ken Hogan does the job with an off-league club, like, you know, very impressive, like after what he did with Coolderry earlier in the decade.
Not to mention Borris-Ileigh won the title with them 3 years ago. Stephen Quirk came on and I think he hit maybe 3 points and ended up getting man of the match. Sean Dolan, he got a few scores, and an injury time winner by county footballer Joe O'Connor. So yeah, geez, Ryan, or Birr will be sickened. But for Rhinos, that's their second title in about 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah, what's his name? Francis Ford, the Galway coach, would have been over them when they won in 16, and that was the first time in a long time, I think a couple of decades. So that's massive for them now to have won a second in 4 years.
Yeah, and Westmeath finally, Clonkill beat Castletown Geoghegan 216 to 116. So they're heading into Leinster now. Nice tight game again. So many of these games are tight. Like you have to see at inter-county level the amount of pastings that go on, like especially what Dublin are doing to teams. But all of these games, unbelievably tight. Yeah,
this was a kind of big rivalry, but kind of a lot of those, you know, the 3 or 4 Westmeath clubs, the kind of challenge with Clonkill, Castletown or Verney, like, you know, there's very little kind of between them, like, you know,
So the Kilkenny Championship this weekend, so the village are already through to the final, but Ballyhale Shamrocks only got to play O'Loughlin Gales this weekend, and Henry Shefflin's men won 220 to 114. Danny Loughnane had scored a goal for O'Loughlin's after 18 seconds, so the perfect sort of start. But they couldn't kick on. Like Ballyhale got 1 of 5 unanswered before half time. Adrian Mullen then got a goal on the 32nd minute, start of the second half. And it was all she wrote, I think.
I was talking to someone down there, you know, when, supposed from the outside, you see Ballyhale in relegation trouble because of the way the league had gone from, they'd lost a couple of games. But talking to someone, they were kind of saying, look, you know, it was tough for the Kilkenny lads coming back to these Kilkenny League group games straight after the All-Ireland disappointment. If they kind of get back going again and get up and running, you know, they'll time it right. And
that's what it comes back to. Sometimes when you've had a lot of success, like they have won the Club All-Ireland, and you've had a hectic schedule, you probably need to get through a scare or two before you can get back up to that same level.
And they had that in the quarter-final against Clara.
6 down or something.
6 down and came back. And obviously, aside from hurling, like, it's been such a tough time for their club with the loss of the Eugene Aylward. So, I mean, you know, trying to get your mind focused back on hurling again, like, you know, and I suppose they dug it out against Clara, seem to have done really well against Loughlin Gales, and that's on TG Carr now, I think, next week, the Kilkenny final, Ballyhale and James Stephens, so there'll be no love lost there.
Pretty mouthwatering.
Yeah.
Like if you look at some of the spine of the village team, you're going to have Jackie Tyrrell. He was coming in the forwards. I think he was coming back from injury in full back the last day. You have Owen Larkin around centre back, Conor Brown, who's on the Kilkenny team, Niall Brazel, Luke Scanlon. A lot of talent in that O'Loughlin's team.
Because it's great that you've all these, like, you know, the kind of long serving stars of Kilkenny hurling, like, you know, Larkin, Shefflin, Tyrrell, Reid, all involved in various roles, but then it's just it's kind of the whole new generation then as well, like, you know, Scanlon, Brazel, Adrian Mullen on the other side. Owen Cody is probably the next one you imagine is going to come into the frame.
He scored a goal as well. TJ Reid scored 11 just before. I'm sure people are always wondering how he did. For O'Loughlin's, Mark Bergen scored 11, Danny Loughnane with that goal, and after that it was a single point each for Luke Hogan, Robbie Buckley and the ageless Martin Comerford. Their neighbours then in Carlow, St Mullins. I think a lot of people are expecting Mount Leinster to win this final, but Mullins...
They're going for 3 in a row, I think, Mount Leinster,
217 to 119, and I'd say, I wonder how much of an effect it had that Mount Leinster were waiting in the wings while this saga was going on with St Mullins and Ballinkillen.
I think that you've seen that over the years, haven't you, where there's kind of an off-field thing and like one side of the championship is held up and then it goes on and on for the other side. Obviously with small margins, there was only a point in it, but you imagine it must have maybe had a small little effect on it. Yeah,
27 title for St Mullins. Ger Cody got a red card in the first quarter for St Mullins as well, who had a red card in the semi-final. It seems to be a small bit of a team and something they want to adjust for the Leinster Championship, but Marty Kavanagh Mouse, as he's known, 10 points, 5 of them from play. Jason O'Neill got the decisive
He's a super hurler. You know, you could see how much Carlow missed him last year when he was. I think he was in the States, wasn't he? I think, and then the impact he had this year in that league playoff and in a couple of the in the league playoff against Offaly and then in a couple of the games in the Leinster Championship. You know, he's a really, really good hurler.
Last week I upset a couple of people in Kiltale by mixing up Kildalkey and Kiltale by saying that Kildalkey were going for 6 in a row. Well, I get it right this time, but it's Kiltale have had their 6 in a row bid ended by Kildalkey. And again, it's one of those situations where you think they were underdogs the first day, they had a draw, so therefore they'll lose the replay. But they won it well, 117 to 11 points, 9 points in it. That's a fair win. And just to give some of the detail, it was Paddy Keneally, he was named man of the match. A great goal from Patrick Potterton on 54 minutes, that would have sealed it. And a tweet then from Fergal Lynch saying, Kildalkey were simply awesome today, held Kiltale to 3 points in the second half, true grit and determination, fair play to Kiltale, they've been brilliant champions for the last 5 years and will certainly be back, but today is Kildalkey's day, so a brilliant win from them. It's nice. I mean, you don't want a team dominating for too long, brilliant and all as Kiltale have been. It's probably healthy for the championship that it's shared out a little bit.
And you see that in so many counties, and you imagine how sweet it is then when you're a side that stops, one side doing a 5 or 6 or whatever the case may be.
For Kiltale if they get back on top then next year, it'll probably be sweeter than it would have been this year.
Exactly.
The Laois Championship, Rathdowney Earl 17 points, Borris-Ileigh 1-9. So I mean, it's hard not to think of Ross King, and every time we mention Laois and Rathdowney Earl, he's the guy we bring up because of what happened last year. 4 from play for him in this. Mark Kavanagh with 11 points. And it's the first county title since 2014.
Well, imagine not just for him, but like for the whole club, it must have been a tough thing to go through. Like, you know, you're getting national headlines, which Laois hurling hasn't always got, and for the wrong reasons. But obviously, this year has been such a great year for them. Like, you know, and then they're still getting a bit more kind of recognition now. And again, in a county where there's only a small kind of number of clubs operating at the top, 5 years is probably viewed as a long time for them, you know, to kind of go under the title. So that's a massive one for them. Yeah, and Stephen Miller was also tweeting about the Laois Senior A final. Rosenallis beat the Hearts 112 to 111, and it goes, what an incredible achievement from Rosenallis. They have won the Senior A hurling intermediate football double, and will be Laois's their sole dual senior club in 2020. In 2016, they were in the 3rd tier in both codes. Serious rise with a great group of players. That's a massive achievement, isn't it?
That's unbelievable. Yeah. So fair play to Rosenallis. I think that's it for the hurling chat this week, is it?
That's it.
We nearly have it all said. If there's something we missed, message in, and don't forget to follow us by clicking on that button just there.